Heidi can chime into this as well. Is it possible to eradicate Common Core, or are we only going to be able to reform it?
Good question.
You've got 2 minutes.
We can do whatever we want for representative government. That's my reply. If we go at it with the idea that we just have to modulate to the least concerning part, I believe that's a defeatist attitude. I like to use that line where parents will say, well, my superintendent said I can't opt out, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. That is just, again, a conditioning that we've all been through. And some of us are also a part of that. It's not just the 2 generations below us. And I use that line out of The Wizard of Oz. You've always had it. You're the parent. I mean, you're the taxpayer, the parent, the citizen, and a representative republic. The fact that they're breaking the laws, whose fault is that? That's ours. Andy talked about the state legislature, Bill Gates and capitalism. Bill Gates isn't a capitalist. Bill Gates is a corporatist. He's a part of a public-private enterprise that has taken over our state legislatures. But it's not Bill Gates' fault. Quite honestly, it's our state legislature's fault. If they were the firewall that they are to be, to protect the 10th Amendment, to protect us as sovereign citizens of the state of Ohio, we should have no concern about Bill Gates in our kids' classroom. He would never have been allowed to get there. Policy has allowed him to get there. Again, this public-private partnership that has become the norm, and it's actually taken over education policy. Because again, there's no better ground to change society, culture, and consumerism than in a kindergarten classroom through 12. That's where they form all their ideas, all their habits, all their attitudes. That's why they're putting, for free, Google Chromebooks in every child's hands. They're not losing money. They're getting a form of currency you can't get any other way. So I absolutely disagree. I think we absolutely can get it out of Ohio.
And I think we can learn and get better at what we do as well. It didn't come in here in one fell swoop, although, race to the top was a pretty good way to do that. But Gates was here many, many years before incrementally doing things. And so, we modify our plan. In this case, we went to attacking the testing because it was a good idea. Got everybody on board, and we had everybody kind of united with that, unanimous votes in the House and Senate. And so we can get better at what we do. And we will shortly have another bill for you to talk about. I think one of the reasons, it's hard to get people motivated if there's not a bill to focus on. So we're going to have that next. We're going to keep shooting for the moon or the stars or whatever we're shooting for, and we're going to take it down. And I think we're going to be, everybody's looking to Ohio to get this right. Everybody's looking to Ohio to lead. When we were down in Kentucky, was it 2 years ago? Down in Kentucky, we got an invite from Rand Paul's folks to come down and speak. I said, you guys are working on this in Kentucky? Yeah, but we need Ohio. We need Ohio to get it right. So Gates knows it, we know it, we've got to get Ohio right, and then a lot of other, dominoes will fall. Another question?
Yes, on House Bill 138, my students will be testing next Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse my children to take the test. So
Good
it's
for
not
you.
a concern for me, but how
As
can
a
they,
teacher, good for you.
what about the other students in my district? It's going to be too late,
It's going to
right?
be too late. It's going to be too late
Well,
for us.
fundamentally, it's up to the district. I hope that 138 will move through quickly, and if it does, then they will have the ability as a district to say we're not going to do any further park testing. And so hopefully we will get that moving. I'll be talking with the speaker again here probably today sometime to try to get that moving. And as I said, we've got other things going on, but I don't think anything's more urgent than this is. Any other comments?
Well,
Robbie, do you have any?
for 138, just so you know, while it looks like, why in the world would you even file this bill at this point? Because of the timing of the second round.
Right.
This bill was supposed to be, quite honestly, filed in the middle of February in terms of the kind of the three-step strategy that we were going to implement. So, but again, the powers that be and the politics, the egos, and all of that go on. Unfortunately, it was filed very late and following right on the last day before a 2-week break. But to turn that around from the report card protection for the performance index that 138 would provide, that's a retro thing. So that would still be impactful for these districts, particularly the high-performing districts that are concerned about their index measures. That would still help, even if it's not passed till June. The reality of it is, beyond that, all the protections for the students exist. Opt out. I mean, there is no clear statement that can be made. And coming back to this idea of, children's structure within the family and parental authority. If your child knows you want them to be opted out, and then you are threatened or intimidated not to, you have sent your child either a spoken or unspoken message that you are not in control, that you are not able to protect them, that the state knows better. And that is the most dangerous precedent you could set, and likely one you won't reverse.
Right.
If you think they're part of the herd now, just wait. There is nothing, and I don't call it civil disobedience. I call it civil resistance. We're not being disobedient. We're being obedient as parents. It's our primary responsibility to protect our kids. Protect your child, the rest of it will get figured out. But you cannot afford that to the state or to the superintendent or for the district numbers. Put your child in that position. And then on top of it, like I said, precariously let them know that you don't want them there. That right there tells you you've been conditioned to the point that you now are not acting on your maternal instincts and paternal instincts. Because that's your first responsibility to protect your child.
And the children know.
Yes,
The
they
children
do.
are already saying, why am I here? Why do my parents keep me in the public school system? We have had mass exodus in Indiana from the public school system and from the voucher accepting private schools because the kids know, and so they're losing faith that their parents can protect them if they're not doing it. So from what we talked about earlier, you can see what it's doing to the brains. You can't get that back.
Pull them out and still work on it.
Question back?
You guys provided the opt-out with access to legislature. My son goes to kindergarten next year. I don't want the data collection that's in the kindergarten readiness assessment. Will that legislature you put through protect me to get him out of that as well? Will it extend to that, or is it just the testing in the park realm?
There is nothing that requires you as a taxpayer and
Yeah, you still have the
citizen
ability.
of your
Yeah, you're
local school district, just say you don't want to participate. Okay.
Yeah.
Say, my child's ready for kindergarten, he qualifies age-wise, I pay my taxes, this is my community, my child will go to kindergarten.
Okay. Paul, you got a question? We're going to try to make the mic work here because we're recording this.
Okay. So this question is for you, Don. One of the things that I've found about reading through the standards, through the actual text of the standards, is that there's a really strong emphasis on didactic instruction for younger children, especially in grades like kindergarten through 5. And I've noticed even that in the kindergarten standards, one of the things that children are expected to do is to compose some sort of analytical text and to publish it via digital media. And that's something that I read right in the standards. And I mean, I'm sure that a lot of us can imagine how frustrating that is, not even being inclined with digital media as grown adults, and yet kindergartners are being expected to compose
They are
these texts.
frustrated and they're showing up in libraries trying to figure out. One of our mutual friends who escaped the cubicle of a large Uber corporation is actually now, because he was disgusted with what was happening, he's actually working at a library now. He said, you can't believe the number of kids that are coming in because they can't figure out what to do with their iPads or their laptops, and they have to complete these assignments. And we're working through them in the library to try to help them figure them out. The kids don't know what to do, the parents don't know what to do, and yet they're being logged while they're doing that. And they're being logged as being unsuccessful in doing that. So you put a child in you ask anyone, not just a child, but if you ask someone to do something that they do not have the cognitive functions to do, they do not have the ability to do that, whether it's systematically searching, whether it's focusing and perceiving, orientation, space, whatever time, conserving constancy. Anyway, they don't have the skills yet developed to do that. You push them into the limbic system, and believe me, they're not going to do it there. So, and you take away the desire to learn. You're saying this is all about mediating to that child as they need it. You can't mediate, you can't mass mediate to anyone. Jim's saying you have to see what that child needs to learn that material, and you do that on a one-on-one basis, not with a computer or some way doing that. I don't know if that helped your question.
Any questions?
Back in the back.
Okay. I don't know if I can get the mic back there, but shout out your question and I'll repeat it.
Okay, I have a fourth grader and a freshman here in the Kalida School District. And what tests do they need to opt out of at the end of this school year? Because I opted my fourth grader out in the month of whatever, February or March or whatever it was when they took the, the park and all that kind of stuff. I opted her out. But when we went to freshman orientation, we were told, they have to take these tests, they have to get these points in order to graduate and that kind of stuff. So if I opt her out, what happens, then with not getting the points to graduate?
That is not
Here,
accurate.
take this.
Repeat the question.
And the question was about opting your kids out. She's got a fourth grader and a freshman, and she was wondering which tests and what she could and couldn't opt her children out of. And she,
This is another one of those where they're, what the ODE is communicating and what code really calls for are not the same. They're contradictory. There is I'm sure it was by accident. They wanted to be able to compel you to have to take all the end of course exams and have a certain point system for graduation. The problem is they offer 2 other paths to a diploma. So if you have a child who tests well, my children could have, I'm sure, whenever it's set, this remediation-free score, you could have gone and sat for the standardized college entrance exam, got a remediation-free score. The only thing you would have at that point required of you as an Ohio high school student is to get the 20 credit hours in. They cannot force you to take these end of course exams unless that's your chosen and only path to a diploma. What happened is they have to have those end of course exams for all the value-added measures that they're doing to feed this obnoxious teacher evaluation system. So now they're scrambling because they can't coerce the kids into taking them because they don't need them for graduation. And now they don't have what they need to fulfill the system that they built. So it was a mistake on their part, but there is absolutely nothing that compels you, particularly after House Bill 7, nothing to compel you to not opt out your 9th grader. 10th through 12, they're telling them the same thing on the end of course, absolutely not. All they have to do is pass their OGTs. They cannot, retroactively change the parameters for how you can graduate. But the 9th graders have full protection. If your child decides to take the end of course exams as their path to a diploma, you can do it, any time before they graduate. Again, there's 2 things at hand: graduation requirements and a path to a diploma, which is ridiculous as it sounds. But the graduation requirement are the credit hours in the courses that are outlined, minimum. And then you have to choose one of the 3 paths to get the piece of paper. So that's the distinction.
I think I got myself confused. The OGTs, are they required to graduation or?
If you're the class of 2017 or earlier, yes.
2017 or earlier, okay. I actually got to moderate the OGTs, and maybe I shouldn't publicly announce this, but I read the exam for the social studies. As long as you know that white people are bad and that racism is the reason why this country is in such bad shape, no problem with the social studies one.
And this
Out
is
of
the OGT.
It's that's the OGT. Something like 91% of the questions were based on that. The House Bill 7 and all these things that you guys have worked so hard to pass to help my district, I'm from Perrysburg, get through there, and Andy, you and I are Facebook friends. What about next year? I know that they're focused on this year. What do I tell my constituents for next year? Because I got in so much trouble for posting all the opt-out information. I also posted the threats from ODE and said this is what they're saying could happen. Of course, none of it did. But what do I tell people for next year?
The strategy behind having it be just for this year, first off, it was the tourniquet. It was what everybody's hair was on fire over, including parents all the way up to superintendents. Because once that was identified that unless a student took every battery of the standardized test, their funding was in jeopardy from the state. Right. That's what got the attention. And that's why Dick Ross eventually had to come out while the bill was in midstream, to say, oh, by the way, you know, I've got this trump card and I could have done this all along. Which, if he has any integrity before that, it's gone now.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that, well, House Bill 7 was meaningless because it wasn't permanent. Well, that would have never passed, for one thing. But secondly, it was to keep everybody's eye on the ball, which is we have to fix this problem. We can't just basically suspend the punishment for the system that they've created. We want people to continue to be punished in the sense of the districts and force them back to make the parent the client again and not Columbus. That was the reason it was temporary. It wasn't to make it look like it was a ruse, as we've seen many bills. It wasn't to mislead anybody. It was actually strategic in the sense of keeping the heat on to make them do what needed to be done. Because if you remove enough punishments, again, the complacency sets back in. Everybody's willing to accept 50% of the hardship, and we never get the real bill done, the local control bill done.
Yeah, and I think that notion of a park policy is that why don't we just get rid of park? Well, if you get rid of park and you keep the standard, you're going to end up with something just like park. They'll just, kind of like Indiana did the rebrand, you know. So that's a concern of ours, looking at what happened in other states where they said, we're getting rid of it. You know, they took our bill down to West Virginia, and by the time it was watered down, they really didn't have anything. They had, you know, we're going to have a study group. So we're very concerned about people, you know, loosely pulling the football at the last minute, and somehow you don't get what you want. So we're working on that. That next bill, we hope within a week we will have something to report, and then everybody will know what to rally around, and it'll be a hopefully much more permanent solution. But we certainly have people's attention. You know, you've got teachers marching up in Toledo. You've got Amish ready to come to the State House. Are they ready, Rob?
They say they are.
Good. Okay. Amish usually keep their word, unlike politicians. Sorry, Robert. He did keep his word. So hopefully we'll have something within the next week or so. We encourage your input. If you have ideas about how we can make this the best bill possible, we want it, but it is going to be about local control. That'll kind of be the cover story on this bill. It's about restoring local control to people we can actually hold accountable. So I think that's the goal.
So basically, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Hopefully, you know, we hope within a week or so we'll have something to report. Another question?
I just have one question, one more question. I have a lot of questions, but my main concern is I can't get my local school board to listen to me, and parents in my community are not listening to me. I live in a small village, Macomb, Ohio, and no one is listening. They think I'm a crazy lady. They think I'm nuts. I don't know what to do. My husband says, let it go. But I've already had to address my local school board about financial issues. I don't know what to do. They won't listen. Where do I go next? What do I do?
Mr. Perrysburg and help me out.
Maybe you need to find a new school district.
Well, it's to the point where I'm thinking about homeschooling my kids. I mean, I'm a teacher. I've resigned from this position to be done because of this.
Good for you.
Homeschool your kids and do what we're doing in Fort Wayne. We are working with Hillsdale College, Joy Pullman and her husband, and we're setting up a classical Christian school. And we have a file this thick already of teachers who have applied because people that are in the public school system are saying, you don't know how much this means to me to even have some place to go to because it's affecting my health having to administer this.
Yeah.
I know what I'm feeding into these kids is wrong.
Right.
And so, but yet people need options. We're creating a whole other infrastructure for people to go to.
Will that be online school? Will that be
No.
anywhere? Oh, we're far away from here.
So, again, the question was what in a local school system, what when not only neighbors don't seem like they want to listen, but also the board doesn't seem like they want to listen. With respect to the neighbors, I would urge you to, might talk on messaging. You want to make sure that you're, with respect, not one of those people who is, you know, badgering them for 45 minutes and telling them, resist the urge to tell them everything you know. You have to pull the curtain back slowly while you reveal this horror to other people, okay? With respect to the board, in anybody in a district, I just encourage you to keep in mind politics is local, school board is about as local as it gets. 2 or 3 people who put their mind to it can swing a school board seat, okay? It's not that difficult to win a school board seat, and I don't care. 20-year incumbent, entrenched, family business, you will beat them, okay? Do encourage you to come to the campaign school that we're going to have, but you can absolutely, and you want to focus the minds of those other 5 or 6 people on the board, you win 1. Now, you get some people to get diligent, and you compete for 2 or 3 or 4 seats that are up that year, and you take the board, oh my, did all the counties around you just get a world of an education?
I don't think anyone in our community even runs for the school board. I think, like, literally, they just, one person goes out for it and they get it.
Okay, so you just said, when you have one contestant, so that means if somebody ran and they actually knew how to campaign, and the person that's just plugged in there has never had to do that before, what do you suppose is going to happen as the outcome?
Right.
I think you're going to win that one.
Real quickly, this happened in our district. When we ran, there were 3 open seats. We knew that it was the former board had just pretty much told the community, we're going to close down the local schools, we're going to combine, we're going to build a new one, now vote for our levy. That's what they had going into November. So instead of running 3 individual people, I talked to a very successful judge that had ran for 30-some years in the judicial side, and he said, my advice to you is unite together. There were 3 seats. Everybody run on the same ticket, you have the same signs. For $600, we want all 3 seats. So guess what? Now we have a school board that the other 2 that were on there were not educated about Common Core. Now they flipped. We've got 5-0 vote there. Our superintendent, our high school principal, and our treasurer were all Kool-Aid drinking Common Core people when we came on, and they're all now at other districts. And we've got 1 more that we're going to have out of there by the end of the year. And now we're back to local control with people that believe what we believe. And it's all because we ran together and we said we're taking 3 seats. And even if those other 2 wouldn't have come, we had 3 votes. We had the vote.
So again, to return it to you, I'm going to give Andy, but that's good news that your incumbents are lethargic and only 1 person ever runs for those seats. That makes them low-hanging ripe fruit.
And to kind of bring me back to a story that is important for me as a state legislator, there was a colleague of mine who lost down in Heidi's district that got the legislature's attention. Because it is changing an incumbent or taking out someone who is otherwise invulnerable but is vulnerable in an issue that really gets people's attention. So you do have the power. Whether you choose to exercise it is up to you. And it's important because it is, many politicians really only care about their next re-election. And if you look at Washington, D.C., now we've already heard, even though the party has a majority in the House and Senate, nothing's going to happen until the next election. So that's what, that's what happens because they really probably don't want to have to do anything or be particularly accountable. Your job is to hold them accountable.
Mary.
Okay, Mary?
My question is, if you've got an older child, I have a sophomore, what do you do about the ACT, SAT? I mean, do you really let them take it?
Actually, here people are not letting them taking it, but many people are planning. There's 850 schools that do the FAIR test, and they don't even take ACT or SAT scores. So decide what your plan is for your child. Many people are just starting their kids in a business. My software, he's a CTO for Warren Buffett. His boys already know how to do Microsoft, and they're starting their own businesses. So I'm saying you find out what your children are going to do. Most people realize that the whole collegiate system, we fully realize in Indiana, the whole thing with the community colleges and all that is also dumbed down. Because of Common Core, you had to dumb everything down so they wouldn't need any remediation when they get there. So you really need to think about what you're doing. There's only 4 schools in the United States that do not accept financial aid from the government, federal money. And that's Hillsdale, Grove City, Christendom, and Patrick Henry. The rest all take the money. The Christian schools are on board with taking the money, so they have to do the affirmative action as far as accepting those kind of professors. So don't be thinking you got to go to get all your stickers and degrees for your kids when you can be setting them up in a capitalism type of thing too. You can read, you can learn. The SAT and the ACT, all of those are aligned with Common Core, but the ACT did hold one back. Because you know what, Stanford and the elite schools, they don't want the dumbed down Common Core kids. That's the whole thing for the SAT and the standardized testing, the norm reference testing, is because it's to signal out and siphon out who is going to be the thinkers, okay? Who's going to run the country. And so those that have gone through the Common Core gauntlet are all going to be cut off to the same level. So that's the bottom line. So I wouldn't play the games with it, because then it puts your kid into that system, okay? And we already know the black people, sorry, but they get 250 points added, the Chinese get 50 points taken away. I mean, this is nothing about criterion-based knowledge. This is about conformity. The PISA has fallen. 70 educators wrote to the OECD about or OCD about the PISA because it's not doing what they wanted it to do as far as education. They realize it's all about conformity. So that's probably my
And I think we're going to wrap it up here quickly for those of us who have long drives left. You know, I think the point would be also, as she was alluding to it, when we had testimony in House Bill 597, somebody had done a survey of all the elite folks who are in favor of Common Core to see if any of their kids actually were going to a Common Core school. The answer was no, because they're born to rule, and they'll be ruling the rest of us as we learn the Common Core dumbing down effectively. So that was, maybe we can have one more question.
I just want to ask about, is it as easy to opt the third grader out of that test because of the reading guarantee?
The reason,
The OAA is,
the OAA is current, I'm sorry, is it is easy to opt out a third grader. Because of the third grade reading guarantee, that added another level of complexity and concern for parents. But because they are going to use that test to retain students, and they aren't getting the PARCC scores back until, next January, they realized that they had made another mistake, and they had to say, okay, for the third grade reading, we will use OAAs in the spring. So my recommendation for your child's psyche would be to allow them to take the OAA. That's what was in place before. Don't bring up the question of retention as an issue. Let them pass it, go on to fourth grade, and be done with it. What will come into play is if we don't beat this beast back and take this down, next spring it will be the PARCC third grade reading test. So, and again, they'll have you at the door if you don't allow your child to opt. If you opt your child out, they could, by code, you are violating the requirement to go on to fourth grade by not earning that score. So, it's imperative for a lot of reasons, that being one of them. Taking down the KRA, the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment. All of these things, again, all part and parcel of that rubric. You can tie every single thing we've done in education policy for the last 4 years to Common Core, Race to the Top. It's all one big behemoth. So I guess ultimately what it comes down to is there's no one this year, which is what we've been saying for 4 months, there is not a single student in the system, K through 12, that has to take a PARCC or an AIR test that will be penalized for opting out. All any parent is doing, and I don't know if that would affect those in your district that you say don't care, you are literally giving free research data to Pearson and their comrades to utilize to their advantage. This is completely against, if you would go to a research university, there is protocol to conduct research. You have to be knowingly a participant and give them authority to do that. They are violating the basic principle of research, and they're doing it with minors. And again, there's been districts that have been caught using data as a way to barter and pay for technology. I mean, the idea that parents will allow their kids to be tested when they don't need the scores, when they know there's no academic qualitative value whatsoever, I do find that part alarming. The offside to that is watching these parents who all of a sudden realize when they push back, they light up with empowerment. And again, that pulls off the veil of apathy because it's like, oh my gosh, I can change something. That's what apathy is born from, feeling like you can't make a difference. Like it doesn't matter what you do. That's why we have 20% turnout for primaries. It does matter. Like Andy said, my rep, they laughed at us. Yeah, you're going to primary Peter Stalford. Well, what was the speaker quoted? 3 a.m. in the dispatch. I was up trying to figure out how that happened. That's because we had one message, which was
Go Brinkman, stop Common Core. He literally ran on that one message and beat him by 8 percentage points. It hadn't been done in 18 years of the Republican caucus. So it can be done. It's empowering when you're a part of it, and it makes you want to do more. But I mean, we are at a crossroads. I mean, this is it. We have got to get this done for our kids. Otherwise, if we submit to this at the education level, there's nothing else to fight for. And again, by design, statutorily, philosophically, innately, we know this is wrong. So you can appeal to people from that perspective.
And again, don't fear low turnout. Low turnout is your friend. In a 20% turnout election, you need 10% plus one. So you get your diehards out there on your message. Let the establishment cry about the low turnout.
Let me finish up with one other comment here. The reason that fascism works is because the mindset of the people want it. If people do not want democracy, if they do not want it in their hearts, they will not have it. And I speak to that from my mom's background and my daughter's background as well. And that's Herbert Hoover interviewed 350 during his memoirs of his stage years against collectivism, leaders of Europe in 1938. And they said, you make democracy, Republican, constitutional government work in the United States. Our people are not fit for it here. Because Europe had been so ingrained in that. And this is exactly what they're doing by the education. The students don't care as long as they're promised something to do, as long as it's the security, the fall of Athens thing. So you better decide whether you want it or not too.
And that's the worst thing about apathy is that nobody cares. Wrap it up.
I'd like everybody to give a round of applause to our speakers. I think they did a great job. As you know, the title of our meeting today was claiming local control of our schools. And I think our speakers did a well job of that. And I put a plea out to all of you to run for your local school boards. I know we all busy, we have jobs, I have two, and I'm a single parent and I raise 3 kids. But I'm contemplating and making more time and running for my school board and making a difference in my school. I think all of you can do that. We all have excuses, but we need to claim our schools back. Our kids are important. We need to do this. I'll get off my soapbox now. But we have t-shirts, we have yard signs, bumper stickers, and even some books for sale to get the word out to your local communities. Please help treat yourself to some. We just asked for what the cost of materials are. We're not making a dime on this. It's not about money. It's about our school children and our schools. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming today out of your busy schedule.
If anybody is interested, I do have information on how to homeschool in Ohio. It's not the answer for everybody, but if anybody's interested.
Well, thank you, Andy. If you stick around, I'm going to ask you about it. That'd be great.